You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. Welcome in. This is episode 18. We're coming up on 20 episodes, which is exciting. And I'm so excited because I actually looked on Apple Podcasts today and noticed that we have a couple of reviews. So I was really excited about that, and I wanted to share one. This is from Jen Town. I binged this podcast. I feel like I already knew a lot about skin and ingredients, but Emily taught me so much more. I love her gray view on many topics rather than black and white. I especially learned a lot about essential oils, SPF, oil cleansing, and cupping. Thank you, Emily. Looking forward to trying some new techniques. Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate it. And if you would like to read or write a review, you may hear me read it and give you a shout out on the show as well. So head over to Apple Podcasts where you can do that. And if you are listening on Spotify, you can leave a 5-star review, and I would so greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, so today I want to talk about congested skin, blocked pores, sometimes known as blackheads. The technical term is an open comedone. And today I'll just refer to them as blackheads because I know that there are a lot of non-estheticians listening. This show is for you if you are just trying to figure out your skin, figure out the best thing to do for your skin. If you find that you are working with having a lot of congestion in your skin, this episode is going to be really helpful. We're going to give some tips and tricks of what to do from a holistic lens. And I think that often when we think about holistic, we maybe think it's just natural products. And yes, incorporating products that are friendly to the body as an ecosystem and also the greater community of aquatic life and other ecosystems on our planet is an important aspect of quote unquote holistic well-being. But it also means looking at the body as a whole, looking at the bigger picture. So that's how we're going to come at it today, because this is how we try to approach everything here on this show. And what do I mean by congested skin? What exactly are blackheads? It may surprise you to know they're a mild form of acne that appear as small dark spots on the surface of the skin. They're essentially a disorder of the exit of the oil gland, and they occur when our hair follicle, aka our pores, become clogged with dead skin cells and excess oil. So unlike whiteheads, which form closed pores and sometimes can be like a bump, a blackhead forms an open pore. And when this pore is open, that trapped oil and dead skin cells are exposed to air. And just like think of an avocado, that fatty avocado, when that's exposed to air, if you leave it in the fridge for whatever reason without covering it, it's going to turn black. Same thing with this oil that's impacted in your skin. And so that's what gives it the name a blackhead. And it's good to know that what a lot of people think are blackheads might actually be something different, which is called a sebaceous filament. And a sebaceous filament is a natural tiny collection of oil and dead skin cells around a hair follicle. It's like a little tube in the hair follicle, and it does not have a black tip to it. And they're a normal part of our skin's functioning, and they're found in areas where we have a lot of oil glands. So places like our nose, our chin, our forehead. And they look like tiny grayish or flesh colored dots. They're not really dark, but sometimes you can have an illusion of the eye and it can look a little bit darker if there's a lot of oil in there. Sometimes people will like put their tongue below their bottom lip and press outwards, and you can see like little white dots. Those are sebaceous filaments, often on the nose. This is gross, I hope you're not eating, but if you squeeze it and like little white things come out, that's more of a sebaceous filament for the most part, unless it has that black tip to it, and then it's a blackhead. So they're different. And if you're having a hard time imagining it, go on Google and just type in difference between blackheads and sebaceous filaments, and you'll see how they're different and what they look like. Like I said, these sebaceous filaments are actually little structures or tubes in the pore, and they help to facilitate the flow of oil out from the oil gland to the skin, which is there to lubricate the surface of the skin and form the protective barrier. And so we want them there. They're not necessarily something that you want to extract, because it can, one, lead to bigger issues down the road. And also, excessive, unnecessary extraction can damage the skin tissue. And the other thing is that they're just always going to come back as the oil flows back to this area. But the same holistic treatments that I'm going to outline for blackheads today, or for for open comedones today, can also be done to manage sebaceous filaments. So if you have a ton of excess oil coming out of them, or if they really are driving you crazy, the same things that I'm going to outline today can really help with reducing the appearance of them, making them a little bit more manageable, so to speak. So, because I'm looking at this from a holistic lens, what is the message from the body that the skin could be trying to convey if you have super congested skin, if you have open comedones? I see it as congestion in the pore can signify congestion in the body. So maybe this looks like digestive congestion, aka constipation, or a possible sign of stagnancy in other areas like lymph, or even emotional stagnancy. And I want to give the disclaimer here that I'm not giving an individualized prognosis, and I'm going to talk about Chinese face mapping here. And this is a practice based on the understanding that the face is a mirror of our body, and it's like the barometer for our body. It's based on the body meridians and on centuries of observation and correlation, as well as 5-element theory, which is that each element, so we have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. So each of these elements is associated with particular organs and functions, and these associations extend to facial regions. So Chinese facial reading often takes a holistic approach. It's not just saying, oh, you've got this going on your chin, so that means this. It's really looking at the whole body again, and considering not just the facial features, but also the person's overall appearance, their energy, their life experience, their lifestyle, all the things. So just keep that in mind and understand that this is a highly dynamic topic. It's a broad topic, and a whole book or a whole lifetime could be devoted to getting into this. So I'm just going to piece out a couple of things and relate it to congestion in the skin. So, for example, the nose and under the nose may signify reproductive organs. So, maybe that looks like pelvic congestion. The nose is also potentially thought to represent the heart. So, maybe this is the emotional heart. How can there be congestion in our emotional heart? Maybe it's talking about or representing the physical heart or the circulatory system. Around the mouth may signify the intestines. And so that may signify constipation or lack of proper bowel movement. This also may look like inability to let go. The upper cheeks over the cheekbone often is thought to represent the lungs and the respiratory system. So I will sometimes see congestion here if the client is a smoker or if they have been exposed to low air quality. So maybe a wildfire has been happening here in Colorado at the time and there's been really poor air quality, or maybe they live in a big city where there's poor air quality, or maybe they just traveled to a city where there was poor air quality. The lower cheeks, like between your cheekbones and your jawline, are thought to represent the stomach. So this may relate to digestion, diet, food sensitivities. The lower forehead and between the eyebrows is thought to represent the liver. So, have you been eating a lot of greasy food or rich food or drinking more than normal? And again, this isn't to say, oh, you have blackheads between your brows. That means your liver's in trouble. I'm not saying that at all. It's just something to think about. Do you have other symptoms? Like I said, did you notice this after drinking more than normal? And if so, tinker around and see if supporting your liver in a healthy and balanced way may help to reduce blackheads and breakouts there. So, for the treatment of blackheads or the quote unquote management of sebaceous filaments, things that you want to avoid include at the very top of the list is picking your face. And I know that this can be a nervous tick or something that's really hard, a habit that's really hard to break, but it is the worst thing that you can do for your skin. It's going to make it so much worse. It's going to introduce bacteria to the area. So avoid that. I'll get to my tips here in a little bit, but that's number one thing to avoid. Next is nose strips or mixtures that make nose strips. And I should have Googled what that mixture is, but I've seen something where people will put together like an activated charcoal potion and put it over the nose, and then it dries and they peel it off and all of the blackheads come off with it. Don't do those strips. Even if an influencer tells you that they love this, don't do it. It's damaging to your skin barrier. It's not even going to pull all of it out. And so they're going to come back. It's just really not a good idea. Next is drying soaps and harsh foaming cleansers. These are also not supportive to your skin barrier. All they're going to do is wipe out the skin's microbiome. It's going to strip the skin's protective barrier of lipids. And if you want to learn more about cleansers and why I'm not a fan of harsh foaming cleansers, episode 4, I did a deeper dive into them. Oftentimes, the allopathic or conventional aesthetics way to address comedones includes the use of retinoids, salicylic acid, benzoyl peroxide, microdermabrasion, chemical peels. And if this is what works for you, great. But we also want to consider the effect that this is having on the skin's microbiome, which I really think in the near future, the microbiome is on the skin is going to get noticed for its important role in our whole body health, because it's not just the microbiome of the gut that's communicating to the skin. The skin is actually communicating back to the gut, and it's really impacting a lot more than we think it is. And the microbiome can rebuild itself. So if you do a chemical peel, all is not lost. But if you're swiping salicylic acid on your nose every day or every couple of days, it's not able to repopulate itself very easily. And just like an ecosystem, let's say a front loader comes in and destroys an ecosystem. That would be like going in and doing a microdermabrasion. And it's going to take some time and some effort for that ecosystem to come back and to flourish again. And if that front loader comes in every couple of days and wipes everything out again, it's going to be harder and harder to come back. It's like a walking trail. When people are constantly walking over the same path, it's eventually going to turn into a dirt trail that doesn't have grass on it at all. And that's kind of like if you're doing something day in, day out to disrupt the microbiome, it's going to have a really hard time. So let's look at some holistic approaches to dislodging these open comedones and sebaceous filaments. My first favorite one is oil cleansing. This can help by breaking down the oil and the cells stuck in the impacted pores. These oils bind to dirt and stagnant oils and skin cells and whatever else is in there. They bind to them like a magnet because oil attracts oil, remember? And over time, this will reduce the amount and the appearance of these impactions. So it's important that you follow up after oil cleansing with a warm, damp cloth. So I always recommend apply the oil to your face dry. You're going to massage it, and you really want to massage for at least 2 minutes. So just like brushing your teeth, you can't just like get in there, scrub it down and be done. Make it a ritual. I am all about ritualizing your skincare and taking it from a chore into this really pleasurable experience. So make this a time when you get some of your facial massage in. So after you have massaged, really working into those nooks and crannies, and especially where you tend to see congestion in your skin, you're then going to put a little bit of water in your hands and you're going to go in and do your cleansing manipulations, which generally will look like little circles, but just let it be a really lovely, intuitive massage. Most oil cleansers will start to turn a little bit milky once you've added enough water. If it doesn't, that's usually a sign that you want to add a little bit more water to the whole process, to your face and to your hands. And so after you're done with this, it's not enough to just splash it off with water. You want to have a damp, soft cloth, and you want to physically use a little bit of pressure to remove it. And this will help to take off all of that oil that the oil cleanser picked up. It's going to help remove any makeup, any sunblock, any pollution hanging out on the surface, and it's going to improve the experience of oil cleansing so much. Now, you want to use a nice soft cloth. I personally love unstitched organic diapers. There's a company I'm using right now that was, I think, unbleached bamboo and cotton, but they're called Oso, OSO. And I really like them. They're really soft. They're quite large, but they're wonderful face cleansing towels. So that's tip number one. The second tip is face steaming. This will help to soften impactions and help them to work their way out. And again, this is not like you just oil cleanse once and they're gone, or you face steam once and they're gone. This is a slow beauty practice. It's something that will happen over time. My whole philosophy on skincare is slow and steady wins the race. I love herbal face steaming. On my website, I carry a beautiful pre-packaged face steam from Live Botanicals that has calendula and rose, chamomile, cornflower. It's really meant to support the skin tissue. And if you are more acne prone, I love fresh herbs, especially aromatic mints like thyme or sage, even lavender. And if you have these growing in your garden or in your windowsill herb garden, these are lovely to just pick and add. If you do not have that at the grocery store in the produce section, you can often find herbs and you can grab some thyme for this. And so, what you're going to do is you're going to put the herb in a bowl, like a larger bowl that's bigger than your face. And then you're going to pour boiling hot water from your kettle over it. And without getting your face too close to the steam, I would say give it like, I don't know, 8 inches to 10 inches away. And put a towel over your head and allow the steam to just carry those little antibacterial molecules up to your skin. So I love these aromatic mints because the aroma that gives thyme such a strong spicy smell, those little molecules that create that aroma are actually what's antibacterial. And so when that comes up, it's a carrier with the steam to bring it up to the skin and put it into the follicle. And that will actually help without disrupting the microbiome. So I love this antibacterial properties, all of the things. Face steaming is lovely. I would say like once a week is appropriate. And if you feel like it's too much, then back off of it. You would know that it's too much if you feel like your skin's drying out afterwards. But it's really just a lovely process that I highly recommend to most of my clients, unless you have severely sensitive skin, if you're sensitive to heat, if you find that heat can trigger excess redness, then go ahead and avoid that. The next tip is honey. Honey has this amazing ability to, for lack of a better term, suck stuff to it. This is why infusing honey with herbs or fruit is so effective, because honey actually sucks the medicinal benefit out of the herb. So if you're making like a garlic infused honey, that honey is like sucking all of that medicine out of the garlic. And it does the same thing on your skin without stripping the natural oils. It's also incredibly wound healing and hydrating. You can do a technique called honey tapping, which is when you would put a thin layer of honey on the face, let it set for a couple of minutes, and then just like it sounds like, you're going to start tapping with your fingers. You're going to do like a piano finger tapping, also known as tapotement massage, on the skin. And it's the best feeling in the world. I always do this when a client has super congested skin during a facial, or even if I notice that there's lymph congestion, because it is actually going to help support lymphatic drainage by opening and closing the lymph valves when there's that suction happening and it's lifting the skin up. So you're going to do this piano tapping on the skin for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, as long as feels good to you. And this will help to loosen up the impactions. Honey masks are definitely a good shower activity because it can get in your hair, or as it's on the surface of the skin with the heat of your body, it can start to melt a little bit and turn into a bit of a mess. So you might do this right before you get in the shower, and then you can wash your hair or wash, the honey out of your hair afterward. I would avoid this if you are prone to rosacea, If you have cuperose skin, which looks like little red webbing on the skin, if you have any type of vascular issues, then honey tapping is not the best option, but you can still use honey as a mask and you're still going to get a ton of benefit. Next up is clay. I love clays. I think they're such a beautiful way to connect with the earth. They're deeply mineralizing to the skin. And clay also helps to exfoliate and reduce blackheads by absorbing excess oil, by drawing out impactions, and by gently exfoliating surface skin cells away. However, it is important to avoid letting clay masks dry completely on the skin, which is so not what we're taught. I remember there was this clay mask when I was a teenager called, I think, Queen Helene, and it was green and it was minty. And I would put that on and just like let it dry till it flaked off almost. That's not what we want to do here. That can strip the skin of its natural moisture. It can be very barrier disruptive and cause irritation for the skin. So, to prevent over drying, remove the clay mask when it's still partially dry. It might be still slightly damp, but it's just allowed to set for like 8 minutes or so to maintain that healthy hydration and balance for your skin. The next tip is gentle enzymatic exfoliation. And so this is going to help reduce comedones by breaking down skin cells and clearing out clogged pores without causing irritation. Enzymes are beautiful because they do not disrupt the barrier. They're not going to be overly exfoliating. They're not going to take away too many of the layers on the surface. They're just going to dissolve the proteins on the surface, and that will help prevent clogged pores. So, examples of enzymes are papaya, pineapple, pumpkin, cranberry. It's like when you're carving a pumpkin and your hand maybe starts to feel a little bit itchy. That's the enzyme doing its work. Okay, so we've got 2 tips left. The next one is using oils with linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is a polyunsaturated fatty acid that is a natural part of our skin's barrier, of its natural sebum. But if someone has really thick, sticky oil that clogs easily, this is a good sign that their skin's oil is deficient in linoleic acid. So, some topical options to supplement that are hemp seed oil, rose hip seed oil, and I will say I tend to not pay a ton of attention to the comedogenic scale, which is this scale that I feel like Neutrogena really loves to use them, or did in the past at least, to advertise their products. This is something that you can Google and find out the comedogenic rating of any oil. And I think it can be a helpful guide, but it's not always true to the individual. It was this scale that was developed in the 30s, so almost 100 years ago, by putting oil on the inside of rabbits' ears to see if it clogged the pores. Poor rabbits. And I just think, one, our skin's not a rabbit's ear. And also, everyone is so bio individual, and it's too much of a blanketed guideline, in my opinion. So, for example, sunflower oil has a comedogenic rating of 0, but I've had plenty of clients who did react negatively to sunflower oil, and it's not taking into account how was the sunflower oil produced? Is this a oxidized sunflower oil? Because as you'll hear, if you are really interested in this, I did a podcast about oils and about polyunsaturated fatty acids for your skin in episode 7. So, in that episode, I talked about how these polyunsaturated fatty acids, like linoleic acid, can be prone to oxidation. Doesn't mean that they're always oxidized. Just because it can oxidize doesn't mean that the one that you have did. but they can be prone to it. And so that can cause inflammation, which can then lead to clogged pores. And so I just don't feel like there's enough taken into account with the comedogenic rating. So you can look at it, but take it with a grain of salt. Okay. So that's our second to last. Now, our last tip is my favorite, which is lymphatic drainage. And you can do this manually or for a really easy foolproof way to move lymph. I love the lymph brush, which I will link in the show notes, or you can find it on my website. It's a brush that kind of feels like a kabuki brush in its bristles. And it's been designed by my first gua sha teacher, Cecily Braden, to easily move lymph. And it's really just such a beautiful, foolproof way because lymphatic drainage, the manipulations can be a little bit difficult, or I don't want to say difficult because I definitely don't want to turn you away from it. They can just maybe be a little bit harder to do at first until you get the hang of it. So the lymph brush makes it really easy, makes it very mindless. There's also a book called The Book of Lymph, and I'm looking on my bookshelf here for the author. Her name is Lisa Levitt Gainsley. The Book of Lymph, and she's got some great moves in there. She talks a lot about the lymphatic system on Instagram. Lymph Love Club is my favorite account who really gets into lymph, and she talks a lot about how to move lymph manually, gives a lot of great video explanations. And then, of course, on my YouTube, you can find some resources there. But think of lymph like a river that's flowing below the surface of the skin. But if it isn't moving well, instead of being this beautiful, clear, free flowing river, it's now a backed up, mucky swamp or a stagnant pond. And comedones can often be a sign of poor waste removal, which is the job of the lymphatic system, among many other things, but it's most famous for its ability to remove waste from the cell. So each cell in our body produces a byproduct, which is called cellular waste. And again, lymph carries it away, but if it's not removed, it can accumulate and result in clogged pores. This backup can also create an environment that reduces the skin's ability to utilize oxygen. And then it can also stimulate an unbalanced oil production, which will then cause inflammation, which makes it harder for the oil to move through the follicle. And so, for all of these reasons, it can and often is a sign of lymphatic stagnation if you have a ton of congested skin on your face, and especially on the jawline, under the jaw, below the ears, down the neck, anywhere around the ear area can definitely be a sign of that. So today we talked about the difference between blackheads, aka open comedones, and sebaceous filaments, and how they're different because sebaceous filaments are not a symptom of disordered skin or a disordered oil gland, and they don't necessarily need to be treated or removed. We talked about Chinese face mapping and what the appearance of congestion in different areas might signify. I talked about the conventional treatment for comedones and my holistic approach, which can often include oil cleansing, face steaming, honey, clay, enzymatic exfoliation, oils like hemp seed oil with linoleic acid, and lymphatic drainage. So I hope that this was helpful. If so, I would love if you would do me a favor and share it with a friend who might find it to be interesting or who could benefit from this. I will be back next Friday, and until then, be well. You've been listening to Skin Earth Vitality. If you liked what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you to find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.